If you're over 70 and still relying on the same breakfast you ate at 50, this may be the reason your strength is slowly declining. Protein hasn't failed you. What has changed is how your muscle tissue responds to it. After your 70s, muscle cells become less sensitive to the signals that trigger growth and repair. The same amount of protein that once maintained your strength now produces a weaker effect. You can eat eggs every morning and focus on getting enough protein, yet still notice your legs feel less stable, your grip feels softer, and everyday tasks require more effort. This shift is not about willpower or motivation. It is physiological. As we age, circulation becomes less efficient, low-grade inflammation increases, cellular signaling slows, and nutrient delivery into muscle tissue becomes less effective. The issue is no longer just how much protein you consume. It is whether your muscles can properly use it once it enters your bloodstream. After 70, muscle loss is often driven by reduced responsiveness, not simply inadequate intake. If the internal environment is not optimized, protein becomes maintenance at best rather than a meaningful stimulus for repair. That is why simply adding more protein does not always produce better results in older adults. Today, we are going to approach this differently. I'm going to show you 3 fruits that contain more protein than most fruits and, more importantly, provide compounds that support circulation, metabolic signaling, and recovery in aging muscle. These fruits are widely available in the United States, affordable, and easy to integrate into a normal diet. When combined with adequate protein and light resistance movement, they help improve the conditions that determine whether muscle tissue responds. Once you understand what is happening inside your muscle cells, you can begin making decisions that change the trajectory rather than accepting gradual decline as inevitable. Now let's look more closely at what actually changes inside aging muscle and why responsiveness becomes the critical factor. What I'm about to explain may change how you think about muscle loss after 70. Many people assume weakness is simply part of getting older. They believe shrinking muscle size and reduced endurance are unavoidable. Aging does change the body, but the deeper issue is not that muscles disappear. It is that they become harder to activate. When you were younger, your muscle cells responded quickly to protein. You ate a meal, amino acids entered the bloodstream, and repair pathways were triggered almost automatically. After 70, that response becomes blunted. Scientists call this anabolic resistance. It means your muscles require a stronger stimulus to activate the same repair process that once occurred easily. Imagine turning up the volume on a radio that no longer responds to low settings. Aging muscle behaves the same way. The signal has to be stronger to generate the same outcome. Protein still works, but it does not work as efficiently unless the surrounding conditions support it. Several subtle biological shifts contribute to this. Blood vessels deliver nutrients less effectively. Low-grade inflammation interferes with signaling pathways. Insulin sensitivity often declines, reducing how efficiently amino acids move into muscle cells. Mitochondrial energy production slows, limiting the energy available for repair. Together, these changes reduce cellular responsiveness. So when someone says, "I'm eating enough protein, but I'm still getting weaker," what they are often experiencing is not inadequate intake. It is diminished sensitivity inside the muscle tissue itself. Muscle preservation after 70 is not only about adding protein. It requires restoring the conditions that allow protein to trigger repair. This is where strategy becomes powerful. When you improve circulation, reduce oxidative stress, support metabolic balance, and then combine that with proper stimulus and protein, the muscle cell becomes more responsive. Even the same amount of protein can produce a stronger effect when the environment supports it. Now let's move into the first fruit on this list and examine how it supports that internal environment in a practical way. Let's start with blackberries. At first glance, they may not seem impressive. They're small, common, and easy to overlook in the produce section. But blackberries are one of the more strategic fruits you can add to a muscle-supportive diet after 70. For a fruit, blackberries contain a meaningful amount of protein, about 2 grams per cup. Compared to eggs, that is modest, but compared to most fruits, it is significant. However, their true value for aging muscle goes beyond protein content. Blackberries are rich in anthocyanins, the plant compounds responsible for their deep purple color. These compounds have been widely studied for their ability to reduce oxidative stress and support vascular health. That matters because oxidative damage and reduced blood flow are two major contributors to muscle decline in older adults. As we age, free radicals accumulate in muscle tissue and interfere with repair signaling. At the same time, blood vessels become less flexible, reducing the efficiency with which oxygen and nutrients are delivered to muscle fibers. When circulation slows and oxidative stress rises, muscle recovery becomes less efficient. Anthocyanins support endothelial function, which refers to the health of the inner lining of your blood vessels. When endothelial function improves, circulation improves. And when circulation improves, the amino acids from your protein meals are delivered more effectively to muscle tissue. Protein provides the building material, but circulation determines how efficiently that material reaches its target. Blackberries also provide vitamin C, fiber, and manganese, nutrients involved in collagen formation and metabolic regulation. Collagen supports tendons and connective tissue, which are essential for stable, coordinated movement. After 70, strength is not only about muscle mass. It is about how well muscles, tendons, and nerves function together. From a practical standpoint, 1 cup per day is sufficient. Fresh or frozen both work. Frozen berries are often harvested at peak ripeness and retain their antioxidant content. Add them to Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, or a protein smoothie. Consume them within an hour after resistance exercises or brisk walking, when muscle tissue is more receptive to nutrients. Blackberries will not rebuild muscle on their own, but they help support the internal conditions that allow your existing protein intake to work more effectively. Now let's move to the second fruit, which supports not only circulation but also the structural framework that stabilizes muscle movement. Now let's talk about guava. If blackberries support circulation, guava strengthens the structural foundation that allows muscle to function properly. After 70, that structural support becomes increasingly important. Guava contains roughly 4 grams of protein per cup, which places it near the top of the fruit category. But its real value lies in its exceptionally high vitamin C content. Guava provides significantly more vitamin C than many commonly consumed fruits, and vitamin C plays a critical role in collagen synthesis. Collagen forms the structural framework that supports muscles, tendons, ligaments, and blood vessels. Muscle fibers generate force, but connective tissue stabilizes that force. When collagen production declines with age, stability decreases. This is why some older adults feel less steady even if they have not lost a large amount of muscle mass. Supporting collagen synthesis helps maintain tendon integrity and joint stability, allowing strength to translate into controlled movement. Without adequate connective support, muscles may feel strong but unstable. Guava also contains quercetin and other polyphenol that contribute to anti-inflammatory balance. Chronic low-grade inflammation increases with age and interferes with muscle repair signaling. Reducing this inflammatory background does not create instant growth, but it supports a more efficient recovery process. In addition, guava provides potassium, which plays a central role in muscle contraction and nerve signaling. Potassium helps regulate the electrical impulses that control contraction and relaxation. When potassium levels are inadequate or imbalanced, muscles fatigue more easily and may cramp or misfire. When adequate protein intake is combined with improved connective tissue support, balanced inflammation, and stable contraction signaling, the result is smoother and more reliable movement. The changes are not dramatic overnight, but over time, they support preservation of strength and coordination. From a practical perspective, eat guava fresh and include the skin when possible, as much of the fiber and phytonutrient content is concentrated there. Slice it alongside a protein-rich meal, blend it into yogurt, or add it to a smoothie. Consuming it 30 to 60 minutes before or after light resistance exercise can help align nutrient availability with muscle signaling. Guava does not replace protein or movement. It supports the structural and biochemical systems that allow both to work effectively. Now let's move to the final fruit, which focuses on metabolic efficiency inside the muscle cell itself. Passion fruit. This is the fruit almost no one talks about when discussing muscle health, and that lack of attention is precisely why it deserves serious consideration. Among commonly available fruits in the United States, passion fruit is one of the higher protein options per cup. But once again, the protein itself is only part of the equation. What makes passion fruit so strategic for adults over 70 is what it does to the metabolic environment surrounding your muscle cells. As we age, insulin sensitivity often declines. Even in people without diabetes, the body becomes less efficient at moving nutrients from the bloodstream into cells. Amino acids may circulate in the blood, but if cellular uptake is impaired, muscle tissue does not receive the full benefit. Passion fruit contains significant fiber and magnesium, two nutrients closely tied to metabolic regulation. Fiber slows glucose absorption and supports insulin stability. Stable insulin signaling matters because insulin is not just about blood sugar. It is also a hormone that helps shuttle amino acids into muscle cells. If insulin signaling is chaotic, nutrient delivery becomes less efficient and muscle responsiveness declines. Magnesium plays a direct role in muscle contraction and relaxation. It participates in hundreds of enzymatic reactions in the body, including those involved in energy production. Inside muscle cells, energy is required not only for movement, but also for repair. When mitochondrial energy production declines with age, recovery slows, and repair processes become less efficient. Passion fruit supports that energy system indirectly by contributing magnesium and antioxidant compounds that help protect cellular structures from oxidative damage. Now think about the bigger picture. You consume protein. Your body breaks it down into amino acids. Those amino acids enter the bloodstream, but they still have to cross into muscle tissue before they can be used effectively. For that to happen efficiently, you need stable insulin signaling, healthy circulation, and adequate intracellular energy production. Passion fruit supports those conditions in a way that enhances overall metabolic balance. It does not build muscle on its own, but it improves the environment that allows muscle to respond appropriately. And that distinction is critically important, because after 70, the limiting factor is often not intake. It is responsiveness. There is another overlooked advantage worth mentioning. Passion fruit has a relatively modest glycemic impact compared to many sweet fruits. That means you're less likely to experience sharp spikes and crashes that can contribute to metabolic stress. For older adults who are watching blood sugar levels, this becomes particularly relevant and adds another layer of strategic value. Now let's make this practical. How do you actually use passion fruit? Scoop the pulp and seeds directly into Greek yogurt. Blend it into a smoothie with milk or a protein source. Add it to cottage cheese. Combine it with chia seeds for additional protein density. Use it alongside real protein sources rather than treating it as a replacement. Eat it within an hour after light resistance exercise, bodyweight movements, or even a brisk walk, because that post-activity window is when muscle tissue becomes more receptive to nutrients and repair signaling intensifies. It is also important to understand that large quantities are not necessary. Consistency is far more important than volume. 3 to 4 times per week is sufficient to support the metabolic environment we're discussing and to reinforce responsiveness over time. Here's what happens when you combine all 3 fruits strategically. Blackberries support circulation and reduce oxidative interference. Guava supports connective tissue integrity and contraction signaling. Passion fruit supports metabolic responsiveness and intracellular energy balance. Together, they do not replace protein, but they improve the efficiency with which protein is utilized inside aging muscle tissue. And after 70, that efficiency can determine whether strength stabilizes or continues to decline gradually. But there is one more critical piece that many people overlook. Even the most strategic nutrition will not protect your muscle if one foundational habit is missing, and that is what we need to address next. Before you expect any fruit to preserve your muscle, you need to understand one non-negotiable truth. Muscle does not grow simply because you eat, and nutrition alone is never the full trigger. Muscle grows because you challenge it in a way that forces adaptation. Food supplies the material required for repair, but movement is what sends the biological signal that initiates that repair. And without that signal, even the best nutrition becomes maintenance at best rather than meaningful progression. After 70, this relationship between stimulus and nutrition becomes even more important. Your muscles are not waiting for more calories. They are waiting for activation that tells them they are still needed. When you perform resistance-based movement, whether that's light dumbbells, resistance bands, chair squats, or even controlled bodyweight exercises, you create microscopic stress inside muscle fibers. That stress triggers repair pathways. Those pathways signal satellite cells, protein synthesis machinery, and energy systems to begin rebuilding. That is the precise moment when nutrition begins to matter most. If you eat protein but never create stimulus, the response remains muted. If you create stimulus but fail to support recovery, the rebuilding process slows and becomes inefficient. The most powerful results occur when both occur together in a coordinated way. This is where your three fruits become strategic additions rather than isolated foods. Imagine this sequence. You perform 15 minutes of resistance band exercises. Nothing extreme, just controlled movements that challenge your muscles safely. Within the next hour, you consume a protein-rich meal: eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, fish, chicken, or plant protein. Now add blackberries, and you have supported circulation while helping reduce oxidative stress that interferes with repair. Add guava, and you have contributed structural support nutrients and anti-inflammatory compounds that reinforce connective tissue stability. Add passion fruit, and you have supported insulin signaling and intracellular energy balance in a way that enhances nutrient uptake. Now the environment is aligned in a coordinated manner. Stimulus combined with protein and optimized metabolic conditions creates the biological setting required for adaptation. That is how you shift trajectory over time. This does not require hours in a gym or complex routines. It requires consistency applied intelligently. 2 to 3 short resistance sessions per week is enough to preserve and even rebuild strength in older adults. Numerous studies have shown that seniors in their 70s and 80s can increase muscle mass with structured resistance training. The body does not lose its ability to adapt entirely. What it loses is sensitivity, and that sensitivity can be restored with the right stimulus and supportive nutrition. Now let's address something important so there is no confusion. You do not need to eliminate eggs. Eggs remain one of the highest quality protein sources available. They contain leucine, an amino acid critical for activating muscle protein synthesis. But relying on eggs alone without improving the internal environment may limit results in older adults. Think of eggs as the engine that provides power. Think of these fruits as the tuning system that optimizes how that engine performs. An engine without proper tuning still runs, but it does not operate at peak efficiency. After 70, efficiency determines outcomes more than volume. This is where many seniors unknowingly underperform. They focus on adding more protein instead of improving responsiveness. They increase portion size instead of improving circulation. They chase supplements instead of improving movement quality. But the foundation remains remarkably simple and does not require complication. Lift something moderately heavy in a safe, controlled manner. Eat adequate protein consistently. Support the internal environment with nutrient-dense foods. Repeat this pattern consistently week after week. That is the framework. This approach does not require extreme diets, miracle powders, or complicated regimens that are difficult to sustain. Now, if you're over 75 and wondering whether it's too late to make a meaningful difference, let me be very clear about this point. It is not too late. Muscle tissue remains adaptable deep into advanced age. The speed of adaptation may slow. The stimulus may need to be slightly stronger or more deliberate. But the ability to respond does not disappear completely. The real danger is not aging itself. The real danger is prolonged inactivity combined with poor nutrient utilization. And once you understand that interaction, you begin to see something powerful. Decline may be common in modern aging populations, but it is not mandatory when stimulus and environment are aligned correctly. Now let's bring this together into a simple weekly plan you can actually follow. Let's make this simple, because strength after 70 does not require perfection, and it certainly does not require extremes. It requires structure applied consistently. Here's what a realistic week could look like. 2 to 3 days per week, perform short resistance sessions. This does not mean heavy gym workouts. It means controlled, deliberate movements that challenge your muscles safely. Chair squats, wall push-ups, resistance band rows, light dumbbell curls, step-ups. Even standing from a seated position repeatedly can be effective when done intentionally. 15 to 20 minutes is enough for most older adults to create the stimulus required for adaptation. You are not trying to exhaust yourself. You are trying to activate muscle fibers in a deliberate and sustainable way. On those same days, prioritize adequate protein intake. Many older adults benefit from spreading protein across meals instead of consuming most of it at dinner. Aiming for roughly 25 to 35 grams of protein per main meal is often more effective than small scattered amounts, though exact needs vary depending on body weight and health status. This is where eggs, Greek yogurt, fish, lean meats, or plant proteins remain important and should not be neglected. Now layer in your fruit strategy in a practical way. On resistance days, add one of the 3 fruits within an hour of finishing your session. Add a cup of blackberries to yogurt or cottage cheese. Slice fresh guava alongside your meal. Scoop passion fruit into a smoothie with protein. Rotate them throughout the week to provide varied micronutrient support. On non-training days, you can still include them as supportive foods, but understand that movement remains the primary trigger for adaptation. Nutrition amplifies what movement initiates. It does not replace it. Hydration matters too, because even mild dehydration can reduce muscle performance and recovery efficiency. Older adults often experience a reduced thirst signal, so drinking water consistently throughout the day becomes important whether you feel thirsty or not. Sleep is another non-negotiable factor. Growth hormone release and tissue repair occur during deeper stages of sleep. Poor sleep blunts recovery, no matter how perfect your diet appears or how consistent your training routine becomes. This is not about one fruit in isolation. It is about alignment between stimulus, protein intake, micronutrient support, and adequate recovery. When those pieces line up consistently, the body responds in predictable ways, and the results are rarely dramatic overnight. They are steady and progressive. Stability improves gradually. Endurance increases over time. Confidence begins to return. You may notice that standing feels easier, that stairs feel less intimidating, that balance improves, and that you feel more secure in your own body. That is what real functional progress looks like in later decades of life. Now I want to address something important from a safety standpoint. If you have kidney disease, advanced diabetes, or specific medical conditions, you should always discuss dietary changes with your healthcare provider. Fruits like guava and passion fruit contain potassium, and portion control matters depending on your lab values and medical history. Safety always comes first, especially when chronic conditions are involved. But for most generally healthy seniors, combining moderate resistance training with adequate protein and strategic fruit intake can be a powerful way to preserve independence. Because that is what this discussion is truly about. It is not about aesthetics or building a six-pack at 75. It is about independence and functional strength. It is about the ability to move without fear. It is about the ability to stand without assistance. It is about carrying your own groceries, trusting your balance, and feeling stable in your daily life. Muscle after 70 is not about vanity. It is a form of insurance that protects mobility and autonomy. And you still have the ability to protect it with deliberate action. Start with one resistance session this week. Add one of these fruits alongside a protein-rich meal. Be consistent rather than intense. Then observe what changes over the next 3 months. Strength may decline when neglected, but it responds remarkably well to strategy when stimulus and environment are aligned. If this helped you understand muscle health in a clearer and more practical way, subscribe. Because the goal here is not to accept aging blindly. The goal is to approach aging intelligently and preserve independence for as long as possible. And I'll see you in the next video.